Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good evening, good day. How are all my followers, friends doing out there today? Hello. Okay, I'm trying this from a different angle. I like the wide angle, but tonight this morning I'm trying something different. It is 2:02 in the AM where I live, and I'm up. I think this is important to have a conversation about. Whether I have this conversation with myself or with someone else, it's still going to be had at this particular time, on this particular day, in this particular moment. So my title is Undefined Lines. Staying in your lane with friends. I'll also be talking about with family, with partners, and your children. So this will be a series of conversations that I will have, or scopes that I'll do about this subject, undefined lines. I got this idea. Hello, thanks for joining. I cannot see who you are, so I apologize. If you could type your message, if you can hear me, great. I cannot tell if my speaker is working correctly on tonight. Sometimes it doesn't. So if you could, please, hello. I want to tell you that I cannot see who has joined so far. I'm assuming that's my phone. So if you could type your name and maybe where you're watching from, I would greatly appreciate it. I thank you for joining me this morning. I appreciate you and your time. So I'm talking about undefined lines. And I got this idea for this subject when I was driving across town a couple times in the past 2 weeks. I was going to the schools to get a couple things for my classroom, and I always come to this intersection. And every single time I got to this intersection, I had an issue with the car next to me because the lines, we both were going the same direction. I would be in the far left lane. We're in the turning lane. So I'm in the far left lane. This other car is in the right side of the turning lane. We're both going the same direction. But the lines that divided our lanes had been worn down. So there was no clear gauge to where the car next to me should be. So because there was no clear gauge of where the car should be, I had an issue with the car being too close to my car. So I'm looking at this car very close to my car, and I'm thinking, okay, you're way too close, and there's lots of things can happen with that, and I'll talk about those later. The consequences, or the things that can happen when you cross the line unknowingly, or maybe you do know, but there's where we're going. So I'm in this lane, and I'm on my way home. So it's on my trip home from this particular part of town. So I'm driving, and I'm in my lane. Now I have lines, the yellow lines that say don't cross this line or you'll be going into incoming traffic. But the person next to me does not have a clear or precise line that defines where he or she should be. So, and they don't have that line until they get close to the front of the intersection. So, undefined lines. And when we're talking in the sense of traffic, right? Only one car can fit in a traffic lane at a time, and horizontally. Vertically, you can be behind each other, but horizontally, there can only be one car in that lane horizontally. Thanks for joining. I apologize. I cannot see who you are, but you can type a message and tell me who you are if you like. If not, it's okay. You don't have to. But I thank you for your time and for joining me. So talking about these the undefined lines. So when you are talking from a perspective of being in traffic lanes, right? There's only one car that can fit horizontally in that traffic lane. Vertically, more than one. Horizontally, only one. When the lines are not defined, in this particular instance, then the cars can get too close to one another. They can accidentally hit each other. There are several things that can happen because the lines haven't been defined. So that's where I got the idea for this topic, is because I was driving in traffic, and each time I got to this particular intersection, there was always a car next to me who had crossed into my lane, maybe unknowingly, because the lines had not been clearly defined anymore. At one point, those lines were there, they were new, they were fresh, but over time they had worn down, they had worn out. And so the lines, the point that says do not cross into this lane had been worn away. So from that, introduction, I'm going to talk about friendships and having undefined lines in friendships, and what consequences, or what heartaches, or what problems it can cause when you don't have defined lines in a friendship. Now, I have about 5 lifelong friends. About 6 lifelong friends. These are people that I've known for years. I trust them. Female friends. I have about 4 male friends that I trust with my life. About 5 female, about 4 male that I trust with my life. And we have an understanding in our friendship. The lines are defined. And should those lines ever be crossed, we know how to communicate with one another, say, hey, you've crossed over into my space, and we know how to deal with it with each other. You see, so many TV shows, and in particular, hello, thanks for joining. I'm sorry, I cannot see who you are. I apologize. If you could just type your name and who you are. Aaron the King. Hi, Aaron. I appreciate you for joining. When you have friendships, right, you want to make sure that your friendship is defined. You both know what this friendship is about, right? So the first question I'm going to ask you is, who are your friends? What type of character do your friends have? And I was talking about the reality shows, like with the housewives and yeah, Aaron, you and Trump can make America whatever you think is great, but I'm glad that's your opinion and it's yours. So anyway, the idea of having friends, I watch these women on any housewife show. So these women fuss, they bicker, I don't understand how you can be around someone who you're constantly having conflict with. Like, why do you want to be in the presence of someone that you do not get along with? I'm not sure. So when you begin these friendships, one of the questions I ask is, who are your friends? What type of character do they have? What type of integrity do they have? Are they like you? Do they think like you? They don't have to be exactly like you do your laundry on the Saturday. They do their laundry on the Saturday. I'm not talking about those things. What things do you have in common intellectually, physically? Do you like the same things? Do you like, watching car races? Do you like watching tennis? What things do you have in common, and what things don't you have in common? And where's your common ground in this friendship? What make you guys attracted to each other in the friendship way? What characteristics make you click as friends? So there's an old saying that say birds of a feather flock together. I truly believe in that because I live by that rule. All of my friends, we all have something in common. We all have something in common that makes us bond. All of my true friends. There's something about us, this trustworthiness. I know that I'm a trustworthy person. I know that I have good character. I know that I have good standards. So I look for people who have who are trustworthy, honest, have good character, and have good standards. So I don't hang around people who I feel like don't uphold a certain quality of characteristics, personal characteristics. I just don't. I don't hang around gossipers. I don't hang around girls who are or guys who are, the common term is two-faced, but who will sit and have a conversation with you about someone and then go back and have a conversation about you with someone else or to that same person. My grandmother would always say, if they'll bring a bone, they'll take one, meaning if they'll bring information to you about someone, they'll take information about you to someone else. So what type of people are you hanging around? What is the character? What type of bird are you hanging around? Are you hanging with chickens? Are you hanging with doves? Are you hanging with pigeons? Are you hanging with eagles? Are you the same type of bird? It's an individual bird, but are you the same type? Because I truly believe that birds of a feather flock together. People with the same characteristics, same beliefs, same mindsets hang together. And I have an example of that back about, I'll say back in 2001. Before my oldest daughter was born, there was a girl who wanted to be friends with me. Now, I'd watched this female, I watched how she operated, and I never desired to have a relationship or a friendship with her because her character was just not something that I was interested in dealing with. I didn't think that she was trustworthy. I watched how she dealt with other people, and it wasn't something that I myself would put myself in a position to deal with. And she asked me, she was like, I want to be friends like you and your other friends. And I was like, that's not going to happen because we're not the same. We don't think the same. We don't act the same. We don't have this level of trust. I don't trust you like I trust them. So I just denied the friendship because to me, she wasn't like me, and I wouldn't bring someone into my circle who did not have the same goals, mindsets, and outlook on life as I did. We don't have to be the same. Again, I'm not saying that we have to be the same, but we have to have some characteristics in common that binds us as friends. So the first question is, who are your friends? Another saying is, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. If I can gauge you by the people that you hang around, then the company that you keep will tell a lot about your character. To me, this is my opinion, and it's an old saying, so it's got to be some truth to it. The idea that you would hang around people who have nothing in common with you. If you are a male, a young male, and you're smart, you are a goal setter and a goal getter, you like athletics, perhaps, you like just doing boy things, fishing, would you hang around people who are, hello, thanks for joining, would you hang around people who don't like school, who are not academic inclined to push themselves further? Would you hang around people who smoke or drink, even though you didn't do that? Would you hang around people who did not have the same belief system as you? I mean, you can do that. I'm just saying, would you put yourself in a position to be around people who had very few things in common with you? That's just a question to ponder. My next question is, what, if anything, does your friends encourage you to do? Do your friends encourage you to be a better person, or do they encourage you to do things that are contrary to the path that you're taking or trying to take? Do they encourage you, hey, if you don't have your degree, look, brother or sister, this is something that you need. You want to be an entrepreneur. This is the avenue that you need to take. I know someone who can help you with that. and they try to push you to do better? Or do your friends bring you down? Do they put you or encourage you to do things that are harmful to yourself or to other people? What do your friends encourage you to do? Ladies, do your friends want to hang out at the club all the time? You know, as a parent, or you don't have to be a parent, as a woman, is that what you want to do on a regular basis? Do you want to hang out in the clubs? Do you want to hang out in the bars? What are your friends encouraging you to do? This is about staying in the undefined lines and staying in your lane in friendships. I know we haven't gotten to the undefined lines yet, but we will get there. Excuse me. I just want you to ponder these things about your friends before I talk about the lines that we set up and that erode over time. I have, I always use my personal experiences when I do these scopes. So my friends, when I got married, and maybe this is more for the next question too, when I was getting ready to get married, and some of my friends had not met my fiance. They didn't know, because I didn't talk about him to them, not very much at least. So when I told them I was getting married, they were shocked. They were like, okay, who is this guy and why don't we know him? So I'm explaining to them, the character of this guy and why I want to marry him. And they all said, I'm not, we don't think that this is the right guy for you, but nevertheless, we support your decision. The idea that they knew he probably was not the right guy, but still they supported me in my decision. They didn't try to influence me one way or another. They just told me, we don't see this working out for you. We don't see that this is the type of person that you would marry. We don't see this, knowing you and your character and your personality, this probably will not work out. Nevertheless, we are your friends and we support you in your decision. So they encouraged me to do whatever I wanted to do. They let me know that it wasn't, they didn't think it was the best decision for me, but still they supported me. And also, they encouraged me to continue not just my education, but my reading and growing and to being the best person that I can be. They're always encouraging me, even when I'm feeling down or I want to quit doing something. They say, no, you can't give up. This is the path. I see you doing great things in whatever you're doing. And I do the same for them. I don't want this to sound like a one-way thing. I'm just expressing what my friends do for me in the sense of the friendship and how they encourage me. And it's a two-way street. It's not just them doing for me. I also do for them. So the idea that we encourage each other when they make mistakes or they do something that may not be the best decision for them, we don't condemn each other. We say, oh, well, hey, it happened. And, what's the next move after this? We might even laugh about it and say, hey, I found out that wasn't the right thing. But we encourage each other. We lift each other up. We're always building each other up and not just as friends, but we look at each other as sisters. We have a bond that we continue to create and build on as friends. And the next thing I want you to ask yourself about your friends is, what influences do they have in your life as far as decision making? And the reason why I said that last example was kind of like with my friends and my decision to get married, kind of goes with this one also. What decision making influence do they have in your life? Do your friends encourage you to make bad decisions for your life? When it comes to your family, if you're married and you have single friends, do your single friends give you advice on how to deal with your husband or your wife? What influence do they have? I remember several years ago, I was talking to someone about I was single at the time. I think it was either before or after I got divorced. I can't remember. But I was single at the time, and I think it was before. I was having a conversation about a married person's relationship. And so I'm giving advice about this married relationship as a single woman, right? I do understand some aspects of marriage, but this was before I had ever been married. So I'm giving advice not to the married woman, but to someone talking about this married woman's relationship. Now, two things wrong there. One, I'm talking to someone else about someone else's relationship. Not the right thing to do. And then, as a single woman, I was talking to someone about a married woman's relationship. Not another not so great idea. Not that I can't speak on certain aspects of the relationship, but how the conversation was relayed back to the married woman had the whole thing was misconstrued, and it just became a mess. So lesson learned, a lesson that I learned was, one, if it's a conversation about someone else's relationship, I shouldn't be in it unless that person being talked about invites me into their life in that way. Number two, what was the other one? I just lost my train of thought. It happens. The conversation, me being a single woman talking about a married person's relationship. Where are my credentials to do that? I had no experience. Only thing I had was books that I've read, messages I've heard, some other third party information. I had no personal experience to even share in that conversation about somebody else's relationship. So altogether, that was not a good idea to be having that conversation at all. So when it comes to relationships and friendships, stand in your lane. Now let's get back to the idea of what a lane is. If you think about it in the sense of traffic, there's lanes. You could be one way going this way and one way coming back the other way. But I'm talking about let's just go with two lanes that are going in the same direction. The idea that we have the lanes represents your goals, right? And the direction you're going in life. We are individuals. We all have individual personalities, though we might have like characteristics and like personality traits. We're all individuals. So we have an individual mission that might be going in the same direction as someone else's, but it's an individual mission. We all have individual talents, individual desires. There's things about us that are unique to us. They're specifically unique to us as an individual. So that's why we have our own individual lane. And though we may be going in the same direction, we have that individuality. That being said, the idea that we can go in the same direction is towards our goals. In a relationship, in a friendship. Now, we all may not be looking to be doctors or lawyers or teachers or social workers, but we're all looking to do something dealing with people. We're doing a service with people. So that can be our goal in life. We're all going in the same direction just to better ourselves. That can be our goal. But when the lines of the friendship are not defined, there can be problems. Like I said in the introduction, like I said in the introduction, there's always a line. There's an undefined line. Somewhere along the line, there could be an undefined line. When the friendships start, usually there's a defined line. Like, even though we rarely talk about it, if ever, my friends and I have this code. We don't date someone that the other person has dated or been in a relationship with knowingly. If it unknowingly happens, then it unknowingly happens. But we don't date people. Like, I wouldn't date someone that one of my girlfriends have dated. We just don't do that. And I wouldn't expect her to date. She wouldn't date someone that I've dated previously. That's just the code that we have. It's just the line that's undefined, but we know that it's there. So that's just one of the things that we know and we talk about and we understand as friends, which is why we have such a great friendship, because there are things that we understand as friends that we just don't do. So in this individual walk or drive, or however you want to put it, going towards our own goals, the idea of the individuality and the lines being defined, just like the example I gave, that we don't date, that's a line. Over time, if you don't keep that line defined, remember, time wears down things. How do that line get worn out? If it's been crossed. When you think about traffic, the lines in the streets or in the roads or whatever you call them, those lines get worn down with weather and because they've been driven on several times, several thousand, hundreds, millions of times, to the point where the lines are worn down and they're no longer defined. But it's been crossed or driven on so many times that it's worn down and it hasn't been reestablished. So in friendships, when the lines have been crossed and we don't reestablish those lines, problems can happen. What can happen? That other person who's in their lane can get too close to you, or too close to your lane or your mission or what you're doing. And I'll say with that, that's someone, your friend, giving an opinion that's not necessarily wanted, or telling you that you should do something that's not particularly for you. Just because it might be an idea that they have or something that they like doesn't necessarily mean that it's for you. And you have to be strong enough and wise enough and trustworthy enough, maybe that's not the right word, but you have to be have the courage enough to say, I like that idea, but it's not for me. I appreciate you giving your input, but that's not the path. That's not a part of my path, or that's not a part of what I'm trying to accomplish. And I appreciate it, but I'm not going to use that idea. There's a way to communicate that to your friend without being offensive and sounding like you're being combative, or in a way that it will be received and then they're on the defense. Because that line has to be established that, okay, I can make suggestions to you, but you don't necessarily have to take them. When you got a friend that's bossing you around and telling you what to do, the lines have not been defined, or either they've been worn out to the point where they're constantly crossing into your lane. And let's talk about a consequence of that, or what kind of problems can happen, because I want to try to keep this a little bit short. I think I've been going pretty long here. So one of the things that can happen when you've got a friend, and we're talking about friends in these undefined lines, who doesn't understand where their position in your life is, and they're constantly trying to come into your lane. And when I say come into your lane, I mean trying to tell you what to do or giving their input, and they don't understand where the line of friendship is, and they're continuously crossing this line that causes you offense, that upsets you, that puts you in negative positions. We need to make sure that those lines are established and they stay established, that when they're crossed, we repaint the line and say, this is where you cannot cross. This is a line that you cannot cross. This is an area that you cannot come into. And we can do that respectfully and not ruin the friendship, because you have to define those lines. You have to define those boundaries, which are necessary in any type of relationship, especially in friendships. You don't want someone always controlling your life. Even though, like I said, you may be going in the same direction. You may both be going to get your doctorate degrees in education. You may both be going to get your doctorate degrees in psychology, but the path you take may be different. You may not be going to the same school. You may not even take the same, all of the same courses. I'm sure some of them will be the same, but there might be some things that are different. So you don't allow someone to put maybe what they're doing and their way of thinking onto you, even though you're going the same direction. There has to be a line that cannot be crossed. And when it is, you have to say, hey, you've crossed the line in this area. I appreciate your input, but I'm not going to use this suggestion. And the consequences, I'll say, because this is the actual experience that I had when I was driving up to this intersection in the car. Initially, it was just too close. And what that caused for me was a little bit of anxiety. It was a little bit of, I was a little uneasy about that. I was watching the car to make sure that it did not come any further over into my lane because it would have hit my car. It just was very close because it did not see the line. That car did not understand where his lane ended and mine began, or where my lane ended and his lane began. So that caused some uneasiness for me, but it caused no physical damage, just a little stress, heightened stress, and it caused me to pay more attention to him and try to look at what I'm doing. But it caused me to keep my, focus more on what he was doing, and also try to focus on what I was doing at the same time. I could not fully give my attention to what I was doing at the time because I was trying to keep my eyes on him to make sure he didn't cross over into my lane too far, which gave me some anxiety, a little bit of stress, but it didn't cause me any physical harm. And I'll repeat these again throughout because it's going to be a necessary consequence, a necessary problem in each situation with family, friends, loved ones, whoever we're in relationship with. So the next thing, when I come up the next day, because I was traveling this route for about 3 to 4 days in a row, trying to pick up these materials. So the next day, here's another car in the same situation and predicament. Now we're in a turning lane. So I'm watching. These lines are worn down, and you cannot see where your car should be unless you're in that far left lane. And so the next problem that could happen, it didn't happen to me, but the problem that could happen is a minor accident. That means the cars can bump each other and cause some outer damage to the car. We won't talk about the major damage. It's just some outer damage, some scrapes. You can cause a little scrapes. And this happens in our relationships too. When those boundaries aren't defined and someone crosses the line, they can cause a little bit of physical damage, but it's not to the point where it's a detriment to your life or a detriment to your health. It's a external scar. It can heal, it will heal, it can heal, and you can move on. This is about relationships. When your friends scar you or bump into you or cause you some type of external damage, it'll heal eventually, depending on the impact that it has in your life. It will heal the physical damage on the outside. Now, what does that do to you mentally and emotionally? Mentally, it says, okay, I've got to watch out for this so that next time, hopefully there won't be a next time. I've got to define the lines. Physically, it caused you maybe just the wound. It caused maybe, when you think about it in the sense of a car, maybe it wasn't enough damage where the car's out of forgive me, what is the word I'm looking for, is out of commission for a while. You don't have to put it in the shop, for an extended period of time. It's a little scratch. Okay, you don't have to put it in commission for a little time. It won't be out of commission for an extended period of time, or either at all. It could be painted over, or, you can use the little magic pen, the little scratch. It's not a lot of damage done there. So I think I'm going a little long. I want to finish this conversation perhaps tomorrow. Fix this right quick. About this, because I just think this is important in friendships for us to understand what we're dealing with and how we deal with each other, and to make sure that we have defined lines so we don't bump into each other, we don't bump heads, we don't cause scars. I'm stopping at external tonight. We don't cause external damage, even though it's healable. It can be healed. The damage is minimal. There still is some type of damage. And anytime we get a scar, like I have scars that I received in my childhood that are still visible on me to this day, and I know how I got them. I don't have any scars from my childhood that I don't know how I got them. So when we think about this with friends, even though you may scar them, it's an external scar and it causes no internal damage, there's always going to be the thought in the mind, I remember when I got this scar. Even though the forgiveness may be there, or you got over it, or you got through it, the external damage may be minimal, but the scars may still be there. So I'll do a part 2 later on today, because it is after 2:30, and I think I started a little after 2, so I don't want to go any further, because doing long scopes, people get bored, and I don't want to do that to you if I already have. So, but remember, when you don't have defined lines in a friendship, and that's what we're talking about tonight, in the friendship, one of the consequences could be, or one of the problems that could happen is, one, you can cause the other person a little bit of anxiety, and you can cause them to divert part of their focus off of what they should be doing onto what you're doing, because they're watching to see what you're doing, because you're getting too close. Not that you haven't crossed into their lane yet, you've just gotten really close to it, because the lines aren't defined. It's necessary to define lines in a relationship. The second thing is that person may cross into your line, into your lane, because you've allowed them to, or the lines haven't been defined, the boundaries have not been set up to where you both understand that this is a boundary and it has caused some external damage. Even with external damage or scars, they're remembered. And I'm speaking for myself. I remember all of my external scars. I remember how I got them. And that external scar said to me, don't do that again. I can see the scar on my arms, on my knees, from where I got scars as a child doing silly things or whatever I was doing. And I remember how I got those scars. So even though it may not have caused any internal damage, the external damage caused me to remember how I got it, and why I got it, and why I didn't want to do that again. So be mindful of your boundaries, or your lines, or your lanes, your undefined lanes and your defined lanes. It's necessary to have boundaries in all relationships. Tonight we're talking, or this morning we're talking about friendships. It's very necessary to have boundaries. Okay, so we'll pick this up again a little later on today. Thanks for joining me. I just want to let you know, as I always do, you are beautiful, you are smart, you are kind, you are creative, you are intelligent, you are needed, and you are loved. Women, you're needed. You're the seed carriers in the earth. No seeds can be brought forth without you. Men, you are the seed producers in the earth, and you are needed. Life cannot happen without you. So let's stick together. Let's be friends. Let's take care of one another. Peace, and have a good night.